Thanks for having me here. The Rockefeller Foundation is really proud to support the Municipal Art Society's survey on livability in New York City. The city has been our home for literally the past 99 years. It's obviously the greatest city on earth. It's a city of limitless opportunity and innovation. But it's also home of the poorest congressional district in the entire United States. It's home to the High Line, but it's also home to Brownsville. It's home to Park Avenue Armory, but it's also home to East New York. An expert on resilience said to me, if you want to find out if a community is becoming more resilient, you have to find out what that community wants to become. And that's why we're so excited to support the survey on livability in New York City. I'd like to introduce a man who the Rockefeller Foundation is proud to call our partner and our friend, the president of the Municipal Art Society, Cipolla.
Thank you so much, Eddie, for all you do and all your support. I'm feeling really self-conscious about my binder right now, Richard. But there's no way, I mean, with this data. You know, we were several, I noticed it thinned out a little bit after Richard finished back there, but we're several rows back. I hope you guys can see that are way, way back. There are chairs. Hello. There are chairs that are still empty, so it looks like we're 5 or 6 deep at the way top. Anyway, if you're happy, I'm happy, but please feel free to come down. Thanks again to Eddie, and thanks again to the Rockefeller Foundation's renewed support of this very important initiative for MAS and for New York City. It takes a long time to go through these survey results, and I'm not going to spend a long time. We're going to do a very top-line review. This survey is a very extensive one. It is very deep. It is by neighborhood, and the methodology for the survey and the complete survey is available at mas.org. So we'll rely on the website for you to get more information, but we'll do some top-line work right now. This poll, listening to the residents of New York about their opinions and perceptions about their city, is at the heart of our livability and city-building work. The technical bits of the survey are that we are grateful to the Marist Institute for Public Opinion for working with us again on this survey. The data for this survey was obtained through telephone calls to a representative sample of New York City residents. As I said, the complete methodology can be found along with the major findings and this presentation at mas.org/summit 2010. A good number of questions were repeated this year to track data for trends, and we'll see some of those results. This survey gives us wonderful information on key indicators of livability in New York from the people who live and work here. It's our hope that the survey generates as many or more questions than it answers and sparks conversations over the next 2 days. I know for certain it will shape and inform the work of MAS in the coming year. Okay, let's get to it. Are New Yorkers satisfied with living in New York City? You betcha we are, 84%. So what's the alternative, right? How could it not be high? As you can see, this has held steady since our first poll in 2010. Apologies out to those of you who came from other cities and from around the world on that comment. The percentage of very satisfied New Yorkers is up, 27% in 2010, 28% last year, and 30% this year. And I'm seeing a lot of this, and we're sorry about that, but we're pleased for the sunshine. Satisfaction is significantly higher in both Manhattan and Brooklyn than in the other boroughs, and with people living in households earning $75,000 or more annually. There is some movement when we look at the trends in the boroughs. Brooklyn residents are the most satisfied with the city as a place to live at 90%. Come on, Brooklyn, up from 79% in 2010. The Bronx is down, 75% saying NYC is a good place to live versus 77% in 2010. Manhattanite satisfaction at 88%, while high overall is down from 95% in 2010. And Staten Island satisfaction with New York City as a place to live dipped last year from 80% to 77% and has stayed level this year. As with prior year's surveys, with many questions we probed on the neighborhood level. New Yorkers are as satisfied with living in their neighborhoods overall as they are with living in New York as a place to live. The numbers of New Yorkers who were very satisfied with their neighborhood is higher this year at 34% versus 30% last year and 31% in 2010. But there are differences by borough. 91% of Staten Island residents are satisfied, the highest of all the boroughs, and have been consistently the most satisfied with their neighborhoods as places to live since we began the survey in 2010. Bronx resident satisfaction with their neighborhoods as places to live has risen to 77% since 2010, when 69% were satisfied. Queens has stayed level, and Brooklyn and Manhattan residents are less satisfied this year than last, and Manhattan is down 6 percentage points since 2010, outside the margin of error. This year, we asked more direct questions about threats to livability. The biggest threats to living happily in New York in order are employment. And Bob raised this in his keynote remarks earlier, that employment is still too high in New York, and there's a lot of, clearly from the results of the survey, a lot of anxiety around jobs, followed by safety, housing, and the costs of goods and services. So employment is the #1 concern across the boroughs. Safety concerns residents in Staten Island 25%, more than Manhattan at 15%. Housing options concerns are highest in Manhattan and the Bronx, and significantly lower in Queens and Staten Island. Costs of goods and services are especially concerning for Staten Islanders and Queens residents. When given the choice between having more parks or housing, stores, or improved transportation, New Yorkers want parks and open spaces. Parks win. That said, having more housing continued to be the most important to Bronx residents at 30% and Latinos at 36%, were more likely also to say housing. New or improved transportation services are most important to Queens residents. We polled New Yorkers on their priorities on a number of livability issues. Creating a world-class ground transportation hub, subways, trains, buses. 61% of New Yorkers think such investments are a top priority. 27% feel it important, but not a top priority. Developing world-class airports. New Yorkers are very split here. 38% feel it is important, 37% a top priority. The remainder, not a priority at all. Being a city with quality higher education, only 10% feel this was not a priority for New York City. Making sure neighborhoods have a mix of historic landmarks and new buildings, 33% feel this was a top priority, and 40% feel it was important. And when polled on whether they were willing to deal with inconvenience now for major transportation infrastructure improvements for the future, the majority of respondents said they were willing. MAS believes that our streetscapes are diverse and dynamic because of the blend of old and new buildings and the mix of uses and people that they bring with them to our neighborhoods, and New Yorkers agree. With this question, we found that 67% said that there is a good balance of older and newer buildings in their neighborhoods. Who says that there are too many older buildings in their neighborhoods? Bronx residents weighed in more heavily here at 33%, followed by Queens at 26%, and Brooklyn at 22%. Latinos and African Americans are more likely to say that they feel there are too many older buildings in their neighborhoods as compared to white residents. We looked at a number of services and amenities in neighborhoods again this year, including those that serve as anchors and add vibrancy and resilience to local communities, something MAS cares deeply about. And we did dig a little deeper this year. First, parks. 61% of New Yorkers rate their neighborhood parks and open spaces excellent or good. Manhattanites, 79%, and Staten Islanders, 70% rate their parks most highly. Then there's a drop in the other boroughs. More Latinos and African Americans rate their parks as fair or poor. What gets in the way of using neighborhood parks? For those who rated their parks poorly, the top reasons: not conveniently located or not in my neighborhood, too crowded, not clean, not safe, not enough places to sit. And now the arts. Nearly half of New Yorkers are dissatisfied with their neighborhoods as a place to experience the arts, nearly the same as last year. 55% of Bronxites and 60% of Queens residents rate their neighborhoods poorly for experiencing the arts, while 65% of Manhattanites rated theirs as good or excellent. There is a big disparity there. 58% reported not having attended an arts event in their neighborhood in the last 12 months, and for those rating their neighborhoods poorly as places to experience the arts, 24% said that there wasn't a place in their neighborhood for the arts, and more than half said what arts offerings there were not conveniently located. Interestingly, the price of admission or tickets was less of a barrier than location. Okay, our borough bests. And the data does have a lot of winners and losers. Takes too long to go through it, but we thought we would mention a few. Gold, silver, bronze, winners. Which borough wins? The best place to live, this one was close, just like it was last year, but Manhattan at number one. New Yorkers citywide rate Manhattan number one, Queens at number two, and Brooklyn as number three, same ranking as last year. Best place to start a new company or business, we asked this last year as well, and hands down Manhattan comes out on top, followed by Brooklyn and then Queens. The most artistic or creative, the bronze medal goes to Queens, the silver to Brooklyn, and the gold to Manhattan. Best value for the money, Queens wins again this year, followed by Manhattan. I will never understand that. And then Brooklyn. How optimistic are New Yorkers this year? New Yorkers continue to be optimistic about the future of life in New York, with 81% saying that they are optimistic or very optimistic, an increase of 5% from 2011. The mood is improving. Optimism ratings have changed in the boroughs, with Queens residents having been the most optimistic last year, now falling to number 3. What's happening, Queens? Which residents are the most optimistic about the future of life in New York in this order? Manhattan, Brooklyn, Queens, Bronx, and Staten Island. That is a very top-line report. And again, information at mas.org. Thank you.